and we want to welcome you back to the platform KC. I'm your host, Brother Jay, with my man Marcus Brown here in the building.
Good evening.
You know, we have been dealing with this KCPS Blueprint 2030 proposal over our last couple of shows, and so we're going to continue on with that work on this show and with what's going on this week. Over the last couple of weeks, they introduced the proposal in early October, and there were several meetings, and we've been covering what's been going on with those meetings. And so as we move into this week, Marcus, talk to us about what's going on this week.
Right, absolutely. Well, again, just to know about the Blueprint 2030, it's a proposal to close, anywhere from 4 to 12 schools within the district. And so there's an academic component, and then there's this building component but that they believe that they had to get done to close a lot of buildings in order to achieve whatever it is that they want to have happen next in this Blueprint 2030.
And just for our audience to be clear, mostly everything that has been discussed so far has been about the building component. You haven't heard a lot of concrete numbers around academic expectations in the plan so far.
Right. And definitely, and that's why what we're talking about here is so important in what they're going to discuss in the upcoming board meeting. So within the proposal, there were 3 scenarios laid out about a number of buildings to close. One, they closed the least, and then the maximum was like 10 or 11 buildings that they would close under these 3 different scenarios that they laid out. So again, they've been promoting this plan to the community as recommendations over the past, since you said early October when they presented to the board, and then they've had a host of about 14 community meetings to present this proposed recommendations to the community.
Yes.
And then once again, remember that the ideas that were proposed on last Wednesday are recommendations. It's not final. But once again, we know that in the near future, there will have to be a decision that's made either way. And so hopefully over the course of these 10, actually we've added some more engagement opportunities, 13 engagement opportunities, we can have a chance to really talk through what those options can be and explore some ideas together.
And so what's significant about that is that as we begin to look at what's going to take place at this next board meeting, they're going to be charged with voting on contracts to bring in a group of architects and contractors to start evaluating the process of building new schools.
Right. And one of the things I don't think can be stressed enough is that when we say proposal, this was one of the first things that the even the district said, is that this is just a proposal. If you watch the video on the district's website, it's presented as such. Excuse me. Not that anything has been etched in stone, that this was going to be a collaboration of engagement with the community to get ideas and get feedback, and then to take that along with the recommendation from the consultants and kind of mix those two together and come up with a decision.
I believe that their thinking was that they had already done that.
Okay. Right.
And they were presenting a plan to the community again. Mm-hmm. It's like this was the cakewalk,
right,
if you will. And so, again, they started slicing up the cake, took the cake to Southeast Community Center. Mm-hmm. They took a bite and said, took the cake to Central High School. They took a bite and said, no way, Jose, get this cake out of here, and so on and so forth. It was unanimous pretty much at every event, community event, that there was nobody in favor of trying to finish this cake that they carried around.
Right.
Over the past month and a half.
Yes, but like you said, the way in which it was presented to the community, though, is that this was still a recommendation.
Correct.
And that their engagement was a part of the process.
Exactly.
And that they're taking their feedback was a part of the process.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a very important part of the process, supposedly, but also it allowed the district to create this perception that things were not already etched in stone, but as we're looking at some of the data and some of the information you're going to present, it doesn't appear that that's the case.
Correct.
It looks like they've already made their minds up.
Correct. Well, definitely. And, again, as we looked back, and this is all public information, this is the information that goes to the board before their meeting.
Okay.
And so these become items that they have to vote on. So there's a contract in there to work with 2 architects and design firms and 2 construction firms to lay out plans to build new schools.
Okay.
Build a new school at Southeast location and build a new school at the King location on 43rd in Indiana, and renovate Southwest, renovate Central, renovate Manual Tech. The latter 2 schools being renovated as CTE buildings, tech buildings.
Right.
And so again, it's like the idea, especially with this new construction piece, that if we still have until December to vote on this thing, why are we looking to pay architects and these firms already before we even jump into the thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important that our audience understands, and we're going to show where you can go and look at this information. Because once again, this is public information.
Yes.
And when you start looking at the dates on some of the documentation, that's where it becomes trouble.
Yeah. So let's just talk about some dates. If you look back at the dates on some of these documents with the construction firms and the architecture firms, we see that they're dated the day of or the day before the October board meeting when the school officials first presented the Blueprint 2030 plan with MGT there to the community. So that was their grand showing. So already at that date, they had signed interest forms with these folks to start considering building these new buildings.
Right.
Okay, so fast forward. You look at documents, and they're signed on the 27th of October. That was the date that we had a community meeting at the Plex Pod. Okay, so again, at this same meeting, nothing's etched in stone. Things are recommendations, but earlier in that day, you signed an agreement with these groups of contractors to say that, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and start looking at building a new school at Southeast. Let's go ahead and start looking at building a new school at the King location. And so again, there were 3 scenarios in your proposal.
Right.
And so again, which one of those scenarios does it align with? You haven't even went back and decided which one of those things that you're talking about. And so the other significant piece is that this is a $280,000 contract that they're trying to present.
Right. Okay.
$280,000 before we even word say go. They want to spend almost $300,000 for plans that have not been approved yet.
Absolutely. And then within the $280,000, there was something also interesting that you looked at that I want you to share, because it's just crazy. Well, it's not funny. It's really kind of sad, but just share with our audience.
So again, just the idea, when we looked at the breakdown, there's $280,000 that's being made available for this study. There's one firm that's going to study the feasibility of this thing. Then there's another firm that's going to design these projects at these locations. Then there's another firm, contractor, that's going to tell us how much it's going to cost. Then there's another company that's going to actually do the building. So now this $280,000 broke down neatly amongst these 4 organizations to be $70,000. They're charging the same amount they have a line item in each one of their contracts for $14,000 to do the King site, $14,000 to do the Central site, $14,000 to do the Southeast site, Southwest, so on and so forth.
Right.
And so how is it that you guys at different phases of this project will break down a line item that says the same thing across the board. And then even at that, you can look at the document from one of the construction companies, and he talks about how he's going to work in tandem with KCPS and the architecture firm, and, with the 2 architecture firms listed there. So again, who else bidded on this? Right. And how did you 4 guys get in? How did you 4 contractors get into the idea that you were going to go after this $280,000 and right. lay it out at a nice clip of $70,000 each?
Right, and absolutely. And the thing is that $280,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money when you're talking about a huge budget. But $280,000 is a lot of money to teachers, to education.
I don't know what world you live in.
Well, really, and honestly, like I said,
$280,000 on any day is a lot of money, regardless of the budget.
It's not when you look at it relative to a metropolitan area in this.
I mean, I
size.
get what you're saying, right. But I can miss $280,000 in a line item, regardless of how big the city budget is.
Right, and I think that's the bigger issue is that, like I said, I think so often these things just get pushed through because in a larger scale, it doesn't feel like a lot of money.
Absolutely. And they're spending a lot of money. That was another thing, just as any human being does, when we look at our budgets, the first thing that we do is, if we, coming on hard financial times, is that we start arresting our spending. We look at, how much we going out and see how we can decrease that first.
Right.
As I'm looking back at, just how much the school district spent in the month of October alone, it's phenomenal. And so there's this thing where you guys say that we're in crisis, but I can't look at this ledger and tell that we got any type of crisis.
Right.
I mean, $500,000 in software alone. You know what I'm saying? Just for the month of October. Now, these are things that are going to cover multiple years, and it's not like one shot type stuff. Mm-hmm. But again, if we're seriously looking at the idea that we got to shutter schools, move students, and do all of this great stuff, then there should be some hard evaluation at the dollars spent. Again, the number of dollars that we're spending on advertisement, KSHB, KCTV5, Cumulus. I saw the ad on the back of a bus,
right.
Now hiring. Again, so not to say that some of those places is not, you need it, but again, I haven't heard at any other community meetings and at the last 2 board meetings where they were looking at how we're going to arrest spending, how we're going to take a hard look at what monies are going out,
right.
to see where we can stop some hemorrhaging. It's all about, we need great buildings for our kids. Well, I can tell you, I saw something dynamic happening on a Saturday, all day Saturday, in a building that is in need of repair from the district maintenance folks.
Right.
And it was very dynamic. It didn't keep the teachers, the students, and the parents from taking advantage of this Lego League moment that everybody was there for. So again, you can try to lay this thing in the idea, well, if our kids go to these areas, they're going to feel like, no, these kids and parents came to our area.
Right.
Came into the building and didn't feel nothing in any way, shape, or form about the building.
Right. It's about the competition.
It was about the competition and the idea that everybody was there for the children.
Yes.
And so again, while you trying to sell folk on pipe dreams and these things that don't positively affect education, where we're spending heavy dollars, we're not evaluating what we have, right before us. Again, they're talking about leveling Southeast. Mm-hmm. High school, mm-hmm. moving Southeast students into Southwest, right? And this is all after you move Central into Southeast. Then right. You go move that group of kids into Southwest while you level Southeast and then build.
Well, and then in the meantime, as if the metropolitan area is remaining static, mm-hmm. and there's not all of this anticipated growth. I mean, just today, when you talk about, our this week, the announcement of what's going on, the possibility of moving a stadium downtown. So there's no way possible that we're going to have a population that's going to remain static and enrollment is going to stay down in these cities. I mean, in these schools. But a point I want to kind of go back to that you made over the weekend, just in terms of talking with the teacher, just so you can kind of make this real for our audience about the lack of resources in the classroom day to day, but then you're spending $20,000 on doors for a maintenance facility. So
more than 20,000.
Yeah,
absolutely. So again, talking with the instructor there, she's like, yeah, we have 2 classrooms that we can't even use based off of the fact that they leak when it rains. And I'm like, wow, that's heavy. And then so again, as I'm looking at this board meetings packet, and I see that they have line items to get coolers built here at the maintenance facility. I'm like, okay, is there a plan to use this building for something else? Do they do food storage here? Why do they need coolers here where they have to get the electrical upgraded? And this contract is $1 million to do this work on this building, right?
Right.
Another $100,000 to throw in the electric doors. Another, about $100,000, $200,000 to do some other earth moving work that I wasn't quite sure what it was meaning. But again, the $1 million contract was coming back for an addendum. They needed about another $15,000 more to complete the job. So now, again, this is the same maintenance facility that left these vans idle at Satchel Paige. They left this stuff strewn in the foyer of Satchel Paige. Now we're talking about multi-million we're talking about $1 million+ dollar upgrades to the facility where you're going to be. Electric doors. Okay, I'm not saying you don't need new doors, but again, can y'all get over there and fix the building? We're not fixing the stuff that we're here for, but we're fixing the stuff for the adults.
Right, and that's the bigger point is that, like you said, it doesn't sound like the district has a lack of resources.
Absolutely.
Or dollars. It's just where the priorities are and
Absolutely.
where the dollars are being spent. And that's the other part that, like I said, the look behind the curtain that a lot of folks just don't get to see or don't think they have access to.
Right.
And so we're going to show you where you can find these documents and look at this information for yourself because it is ridiculous.
Absolutely. Just again, just thinking back to the video on the Satchel Paige campus, and I was looking at the money spent for the month of October by the district. I noticed that there were 2 dumpsters there by Republic Service that was on this site. Now, we don't know how long these dumpsters have been there. I don't know what other monies that the district might be spending with Republic Services, but I see that they had a line item for about $26,000.
Right.
And I see 2 dumpsters sitting idle, and people from the community are just coming in here, putting in trash, big TVs, everything.
Right. Because clearly no one is, taking care of these 2 dumpsters that you're, I don't know if you're leasing or renting or what.
Exactly. Do we own them or are we leasing them? Again, but it makes me question that $26,000 or $23,000, I forget which one, line item that's here for Republic. Now, again, are they going to stop and say, no, this is money for the kids, man, we coming to get the dumpsters. We don't want to keep taking the kids' money.
Right.
No, this is what we mean when there's groups of folks out here looking at our young people as contracts. These folks, before the plan has even been gone to the board, have already sat down and decided that earth needed to be moved, $300,000 needed to be spent in order for us to educate our students better. Come on.
Yeah, and that's the thing where, obviously we can do much better than this. And then it's like, how are you talking about building new buildings when, like you said, you can't even take care of the ones that you built, and then you've turned into a real estate company where now you're bragging about how you repurpose these buildings and all of the non-educational activities they're being used for now.
And we've still been asking basic questions about the academic plan, you know. Just achievement numbers. When I looked again at the 2018 to 2023 plan, it was like everything was increased percentage, no number,
Right.
literally increased percentage of students. So we don't know increase from what to what. We have no way of using that matrix. No, again, and so it's the same thing in this one. But again, you had time to sit down and sign contracts. 5 meetings into the community process, you signed contracts with folk.
Right.
To study this new piece, but we still can't get all data that we need on the academic component.
Correct, clearly, and understanding how long these processes take. If these consultants or these firms submitted something in early October, that meant that they were probably working on it for 4 or 5 months at least prior to that. And that's another problem with this timeline and this so-called proposal.
Right.
Because like you said, once again, it just seems like you already had your mind made up.
And again, another piece is that they stated, a couple of them about, bonds in 24. Again, if you came to that first meeting where the idea of going after a bond was brought up, you would know how flat that fell with the board. Right, the board was not interested in hearing that coming out like this without a whole further discussion behind, really closed doors in the sense of, but how logistically are we going to do that,
Right.
And so these guys already think and are already putting forth the plan like this thing is going to come to fruition without even waiting for it to be voted on. So it makes me question how disingenuous this process was from bang to finish.
Right, absolutely. And like you said, I know, and we've talked about the whole idea like that, the deferred maintenance piece of it.
Correct.
And it seems like there are numbers put in to justify the outcome that they wish to have. And so, so we're going to inflate these numbers. I don't know that for sure, but this is the way that it appears, is that...
Did anybody audit those?
Exactly. And like I said, and then when you start looking at these dates, it's like, who is asking these questions? And I think these are all fair questions to ask. And so, so one of the things that we want to continue to do is make sure that we're keeping the kids at the forefront, that we're not using this as some sort of a political issue or pointing fingers just for the sake of pointing fingers. And unfortunately, some of us just can't seem to avoid doing that.
Well, again, it appears that the KCPS school district is the gift that keeps on giving for the podcast.
Right.
We just keep coming along at the right times when, again, the ideas that are out here need to be propagated, and I'm happy to be in a position to make sure that people are informed.
Right.
But back to what you're saying, again, we're doing this for Kansas City. This is not about KCPS or charters or any of things of that nature or drawing lines in the sand when it comes to young people. Again, I work in a public place, so I take all comers.
Right.
I don't get that luxury to choose sides. And this is all in reference to, what's happening at Hogan. Again, so nobody's without their ailments. And so Hogan was just told to close down until y'all get a little bit more safe and a lot more safe in this facility at all levels, grade school, middle school, and high school. And Manny Abarca took the chance, took this as an opportunity to take a shot and try to puff up KCPS at the expense of students. And so the statement said, radical, unaccountable, and unfairly assessed charter expansion mixed with low-performing KCPS schools is what led to a KCPS student exodus. Things have changed, including who is underperforming who. Okay, let's get students back into our KCPS public schools, including who's underperforming who.
And the idea that, charter schools had to, or what originated the problems with KCPS is just ridiculous.
Yeah, not originated.
Yeah, I mean, not originated, and that's not what led to the mass exodus. If any of us who were around, if we're being honest, what led to the mass exodus was low-performing schools. And that's just the reality of it is. And how we got to those lower-performing schools, we all bear responsibility in that.
Yeah.
And like you said, so it's not about picking sides and especially exploiting a situation that is as sensitive as this.
Absolutely. When we're talking about safety, again, nobody said anything that was so rude about Uvalde or Parkland or Littleton. So people did not go to the hospital or people did not go to the grave, and so we can take this type of shot. But again, as somebody mentioned on Twitter, the idea that, KCPS is not without its own history,
Yes.
Again, just recently at Northeast Middle School again, and the call from Manny was to support KCPS,
Yes.
and that's what people did.
Right.
And so again, Manny, remember, you just decided to run for a seat with the Jackson County Legislature. So that means that Hogan is neatly within your county. And so again, you have to start refereeing with a different lens if you're going to level up your positioning and your seating. So just know that it's not a good look when you're choosing sides, even if you are with KCPS, and it's definitely not a good look to choose sides if you're working for the county in general.
Absolutely.
So know that.
Okay. So, we
Freedom,
covered.
get your boy.
Okay. Yeah, but like you said, at the end of the day, we got to keep the kids first and not be hypocritical about any of this, because like you said, we all bear responsibility in where we're at, and we should all be working together to move us forward for the kids. And so we're going to go ahead and get wrapped up here with this show. Definitely want to make sure that
coming back to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, man. I got to check in now.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to come back to you. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcus. Go ahead.
Well, again, I just want to reiterate the idea that we participated in these community meetings, and we were out here having discussions in good faith. A lot of people came out in good faith to hear the plan, to weigh in on the plan and give their ideas. What excites you about the plan? What worries you about the plan? What would you like to see in the plan? These are the questions that they had us focused and writing down and standing up and saying after each meeting, okay? And so all this time, you were meeting with architects that were moving a plan forward that was counter to the idea of community engagement. So for me at this point, it's hard for me to trust you guys. Everything from this point on to know that you would do those types of things behind closed doors makes me look at everything suspect, because you're not at the point where that should be okay.
Right. Well, and like you said, it's very disingenuous, and somebody needs to call them out on that. And the idea that we're going to continue on with business as usual is not good enough. We have to reset and reimagine all of this, and it's going to be painful for everybody, and that may mean upsetting relationships and not saying we.